They assumed she was nothing more than a quiet little girl spending time on her family's front porch. What they didn't realize was that her father was the last person they should have chosen to challenge. Before this story is over, a stunning turn of events will completely change the way you think about authority, regulations, and accountability. The afternoon sunlight settled softly across the neighborhood as young Emily sat comfortably on the front porch wrapped in a thin blanket. Her breathing remained steady but deliberate. Every movement she made was careful and controlled, exactly as her doctors had instructed. From inside the house, her mother watched closely through the window, keeping a constant eye on her daughter and never allowing her to be out of sight for long. The day was calm and uneventful until a vehicle pulled up to the curb. A polished sedan came to a stop in front of the house, and two HOA representatives stepped out carrying clipboards and folders. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary neighborhood visit, but what happened next was anything but ordinary. Without hesitation, they headed directly toward the house. Emily looked up at them, puzzled but polite. She offered a small, friendly smile. Neither woman smiled back. One of them spoke immediately, her tone firm enough to cut through the peaceful afternoon. "This area isn't approved for prolonged use," she said while checking her clipboard. "You'll need to go back inside right away." Emily didn't completely understand what was happening. Still, she gently shook her head. "I can't," she replied softly. The representative frowned, clearly annoyed by the answer. Inside the house, Emily's mother instantly recognized that the situation was becoming something more than a simple discussion about community rules. What was about to happen would not unfold the way the HOA expected. Emily's quiet refusal lingered in the air, soft, polite, yet completely unwavering. The two representatives exchanged a quick look. They clearly hadn't expected a child to challenge their instructions. "This isn't a request," the first woman said, her voice growing sharper. "You are violating neighborhood regulations." At that moment, Emily's mother stepped outside and moved immediately to her daughter's side. Her tone remained calm, but there was unmistakable protectiveness behind it. "She needs to be here," she explained. "Sitting outside is part of her recovery process." The explanation seemed to have little effect. The second representative opened her folder and pointed toward a document. "We've received complaints," she said. "This porch arrangement isn't authorized for long-term use." Emily's small fingers tightened around the edge of her blanket. The atmosphere was slowly becoming heavier. Her mother tried once more. "Please," she said, "just give us a little more time." But the first representative simply shook her head. "We've already been more than patient." The word patient felt strangely out of place. After all, the only actual patient standing there was Emily, and inside the house, someone had just heard every word. The front door opened, not dramatically, not forcefully, just enough to instantly change the feeling of the entire scene. Daniel Carter stepped onto the porch. His presence was calm but commanding. He didn't rush toward anyone. He didn't raise his voice. He simply positioned himself beside his wife and daughter and quietly assessed what was happening. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. The representatives turned toward him, in their minds. They were finally speaking to an adult who could quickly settle the matter. "Your property is currently out of compliance," the first woman replied. "We've already explained the situation." Daniel gave a single nod. His expression revealed nothing. "I understand." He glanced down at Emily before looking back at the representatives. "And you're telling her she must leave the porch?" "Yes," the woman answered confidently. A brief silence followed, but it wasn't an awkward silence. It was deliberate, measured, because Daniel wasn't reacting emotionally. He was studying the situation, listening, analyzing, thinking several steps ahead. Then he asked a simple question. "Did either of you review the medical exemption request that was submitted last week?" The question immediately caught both representatives off guard. For a moment, neither of them responded. The confidence they had carried moments earlier seemed to falter as they exchanged uncertain glances, suddenly realizing there might be information they had overlooked. The atmosphere shifted again, and for the first time since arriving, the HOA representatives no longer seemed completely sure themselves. That brief pause spoke volumes. The silence lingered just long enough for everyone present to notice the uncertainty that had suddenly entered the conversation. The second HOA representative quickly opened her folder and began flipping through pages, searching for something she clearly expected to find. As the seconds passed, her confidence began to fade. We don't have any record of that here," she finally admitted. Daniel gave a slight nod, as though the answer didn't surprise him at all. "The request was submitted correctly," he replied calmly, "along with all the required medical documentation." The first representative folded her arms across her chest. "Regardless," she said, trying to regain control of the situation, "we still have an obligation to enforce community guidelines." Daniel didn't challenge her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. Instead, he simply turned slightly toward the front door. "I understand," he said. Then he added a single sentence that immediately changed the atmosphere. "I'll make a phone call." There was nothing threatening about the statement, nothing dramatic, yet the way he said it carried a quiet authority, the kind of authority that makes people stop and reconsider. The representatives exchanged another uncertain glance. Neither could explain why the situation suddenly felt different, but both sensed it. Inside the house, Daniel retrieved his phone. He moved with complete composure. No frustration, no panic, no urgency, just deliberate precision. Outside, Emily remained seated on the porch while her mother stayed beside her. The tension continued to build beneath the surface, because the call Daniel was making wasn't simply going to settle a disagreement. It was about to reveal something the HOA representatives never expected. Only a few minutes later, the mood outside shifted dramatically. A vehicle slowly pulled up near the house and came to a stop. The representatives turned toward it immediately, confusion spreading across their faces. Daniel stepped back outside, appearing just as calm as before. Then the vehicle door opened, and suddenly the entire dynamic changed. The atmosphere, the confidence, the balance of authority. Everything felt different. The individuals stepping out carried themselves with unmistakable professionalism. There was no uncertainty in their movements. They looked official. The HOA representatives instinctively straightened their posture. Without a single word being spoken, much of the authority they had displayed earlier seemed to disappear. Daniel walked forward and greeted the newcomers with a simple nod. No lengthy introductions were necessary, but the realization arrived anyway. Slowly, heavily, unavoidably. The man they had been speaking to so confidently was not merely another homeowner in the neighborhood. He was the city's chief of police. And in that moment, the entire situation flipped upside down. For several seconds, nobody spoke. But this silence was very different from the one before. Now it carried realization, embarrassment, understanding. The first representative finally broke the silence. We didn't know," she said carefully. Daniel nodded once. That much is obvious. His voice remained steady and controlled. There was no anger, no attempt to intimidate anyone, just calm certainty. "This isn't about titles or positions," he continued. "It's about making sure you understand the full situation before deciding how to act." The second representative lowered her gaze, quietly processing everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Emily remained seated on the porch, unaware of just how dramatically the conversation had shifted around her. Daniel stepped closer to his daughter. When he spoke again, his tone softened. "She needs this space," he said. "That's what matters." Both representatives nodded. Suddenly, the clipboards they carried seemed far less important. The regulations they had been quoting felt much smaller now, because they finally understood something they had overlooked from the beginning. This had never been about a simple rules violation. It was about compassion. It was about recognizing a family facing difficult circumstances, and they had come dangerously close to missing that entirely. By the following day, the issue had been fully resolved. The HOA issued a formal acknowledgement of the medical exemption request and updated its records to ensure there would be no further interruptions or misunderstandings. The entire tone of the situation had changed. Assumptions were replaced with respect. Pressure was replaced with understanding. And conflict gave way to cooperation. Soon afterward, Emily was back on the porch once again. The sunlight rested warmly around her. Her breathing remained steady. The small smile that had disappeared during the confrontation had returned. It was almost as though the entire incident had never happened. Nearby, her parents watched quietly. not with concern, not with tension, but with relief. Because sometimes the most meaningful changes do not come through arguments or confrontation. Sometimes they come through clarity. The neighborhood soon returned to its normal routine. Cars came and went. Children played outside. Neighbors carried on with their daily lives. Yet beneath the surface, something important had changed. A lesson had been learned, a reminder that while rules serve a purpose, people should always come first. And that understanding someone's circumstances is far more important than making assumptions about them. That was the unexpected conclusion to this remarkable HOA story. If you enjoyed the drama and the powerful lesson behind it, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your support helps the channel continue bringing more stories like this one